Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am rejoined by Denis Čahuk. Denis, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Jonathan. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so my pleasure. So last time, just for a little context, listener, Denis came on a previous episode, talked about his experience in the context of the pricing seminar and the different sort of doors that opened mindset wise. But then we got talking about what his business is like now after the fact and after we stopped recording. And I was like, oh, this would be a good episode. People would really get a lot out of this. So we're going to talk about that today. But first, for context, could you remind folks who you are and what you do?
So, yeah, my name is Denis Čahuk. I'm a coach. I used to be a purely software developer. And with the help of TPS and a lot of other courses, I've managed to sort of go from purely employed software engineer, tech lead, software architect to now being a coach, focusing on helping tech leads sort of get modularity and productivity and proper agility into their weekly, monthly cadence, just to get the stress off of their team. I'm generally helping out teams, small teams in either startups or mid-sized businesses in tech, where they're just dogmatically or routinely following bad advice from the industry, like doing shadow agile or dark scrum as it's called, and just not knowing any alternatives and not questioning their process. So what I'm doing specifically with them is what I now call just-in-time training. So rather than having an isolated workshop where they then have to align what they learned to how they will apply it, and then maybe run into trouble with their manager or maybe some of the team members, I join the team directly and then coach them and most of the time observe and give advice, but also pair with them if necessary on their critical path project and on the critical path of their critical project.
Right. So the most important part of the code base.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a lot of folks in Ditcherville and other folks I've coached privately that probably have a similar desire. They have a similar skill set where they've got a lot of experience coding. They've kind of moved up their ranks. They became more interested in helping teams function better. And I can't think of too many examples where that was super successful. It was like tough to get leads. It's tough to keep the team engaged. Maybe I've had people who sort of set up a Slack Connect room where their two Slacks are connected and the team can ask them questions at any time and no one ever does. And it ends up, like a retainer type of model where it's an ask me anything unlimited, but then no one uses it. So eventually they churn. So, and we were talking last time, I know from the last time that this is going well for you. So I would love it if you could share the sort of secret sauce of, the mechanics and the nuances of how you get it to work in a way that delivers enough value to the clients that they're happy to pay. So maybe we could start with where your leads come from. How do you get leads in the first place? How do people, and who are your leads? Who is the buyer? Is it a tech lead, or is it somebody on the dev team that hears about you and convinces their boss to bring you in? Or are you positioning yourself to attract the buyer directly, and who is the buyer?
So to jump a bit into that other context that you followed up with regarding software engineers being on a similar path.
Okay.
I was on that path. So I was going up in the ranks of seniority as an employed software engineer. But then I saw that if I wanted to increase the revenue that I capture from increasing the value that I provide, I would have to join some kind of FANG company, which for me, living in Slovenia meant relocation, because our fiscal laws aren't really supportive of any kind of company who gives vested shares or vested stock options. So I would have to, move to the Czech Republic or Switzerland, and with two babies right now, that's not really an option. So I wanted to go from this model of being employed to a freelancer, but then I realized that being a freelancer, if I did my job really well, I was being paid less, paid hourly.
Right.
So, but the fixed price freelancer model didn't work, because people just wanted me, either part-time or full-time on a project or daily. And then we'll have arguments about, how much this is worth based on time investment.
Yeah.
But the thing that worked, so yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, all right, dilemma, rock in a hard place, looking around. That's probably brought you to TPS the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm a double boomerang. I'm doing TPS for the third time now.
Yeah. And for details on that, folks, you can check out our previous interview. Okay. So that's great. So there's the problem statement. You're like stuck. You're like, all right, I want to make more money because I'm providing more value, or at least I feel like I am, but I can't. There's no obvious path for you given your constraints.
So that's the side. Mm-hmm. The client side, my ideal buyer is a tech lead, an engineering manager, some kind of VPE, a technical leader in engineering that has direct reports who are individual contributors. Mm-hmm. So it's very hands-on, it's very tactical. And the value that I bring is that a lot of engineers in the industry, from what I saw, never had the fortune of being on a great project. And I was lucky in having joined several, and then a lot of people followed me through my career and sort of job hopped together. And after I received feedback from them, partly due to me doing TPS, I realized that what we did on those projects, the way I did them, the way we did them together, worked really well, and I wanted to share that. So what I am sharing is how I run a project and where that works and why that works and how to adjust that to a particular team's scenario, but directly on their project, not as a workshop.
Yeah, I like that just-in-time training framing. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. It just sounds super, just directly beneficial. It feels closer to the money, so to speak. So the expensive problem that you solve, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems pretty obvious based on the situation. But what would your buyer say the expensive problem is that you solve for them? So like they're in some kind of pain. What pain is that? What symptom are they experiencing? And how would they know when they feel that, how would that trigger them to think of you?
I mean, the immediate pain is that their tech department, the team that they're leading, is a cost center, not a profit center. Mm-hmm. Particularly having repetitive outages or unexpected higher maintenance costs, or maybe they're just pivoting is not as cheap as they would like.
Yep.
Primarily the way that they get me is either through testing automation or domain-driven design or some combination of agility and bridging the gap between the business side, the value stream, and the engineering side, the tactical side.
Okay, so
they find me on LinkedIn. I post daily on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I've written a few booklets to serve as lead magnets. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they come to me and say, "Hey, Dennis, I have that problem on page 62, and can we talk?" And that's how they find me.
What are some of the titles, like, or your most popular booklet? What are they called?
So my booklet that I like sharing is the no nonsense test-driven development booklet. Mm-hmm. I highlight the return on investment on test-driven development because a lot of folks just go into it as if it's a game for craftsmen, for engineers. Mm-hmm. But really, the point I'm trying to make is, well, you need to understand how this is valuable to the customer. Like you need to understand how doing TDD or not doing TDD or doing domain-driven design or any combination of these craftsmanship skills that are being flown around as like even microservices that are being mentioned as popular and fashionable in the industry. You need to understand the ROI for the customer and for your team. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm exposing. That's what I'm helping them bridge. Because maybe they don't need it, but maybe they want some aspect of it. Maybe their code base is not modular enough. Maybe the team is just stressed out of their mind doing deployments because something breaks the last day for every release. Yeah. That is a strong pain point that they bring me on for.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that's painful for sure. So let's just say VPs to sort of summarize, like the tech lead, ideal buyer, someone like that, and you're active on LinkedIn. You've got these booklets. These people they know they have a pain. Friday deploys are a nightmare. They're having outages. The team is stressed beyond belief. I have to imagine there's a lot of disengagement and churn in the team. There is a revolving door. developers are coming and going. Everyone's probably super cynical.
Exactly.
Have they tried anything? What else might they have tried, or what are some other common things that they might have tried before calling you?
So oftentimes they turn me down, and then I follow up asking, okay, not the right time. But then I ask them if they would share what alternative they went with, and usually they tell me that they went with an agile coach,
Mm-hmm.
and then 3 months after that, I usually follow up, and 90% of the time they tell me, yeah, we decided to do an agile coach, but it was meh, so we didn't really pursue that path.
Yep.
And then we start talking again. Because I don't like marketing myself as an agile coach. Like, I don't teach agile. I train the team on how to be, like, if you have a team they're not being themselves, I help the team be more them rather than something dogmatic from the industry.
That's interesting.
Like, to figure out their own way of what works for them and what works generally from the industry that would apply to them where they are right now. Because if you tell somebody, yeah, you need to have CI/CD and Kubernetes and microservices and buy this and go serverless and AWS, everybody's like, Dennis, get the fuck out. I don't have money for this. Like, I can barely pay my next junior developer, and this is nonsense.
Yeah,
You're expensive. The next person I'm going to hire expensive. I don't need you to tell me to buy more servers.
Yeah. And while we're at it, let's rewrite the code base in Go or something.
Exactly.
So, okay. So that's awesome. That's hilarious.
You touched on something important there, though, is that a lot of times when they hire me, the team has already been replaced like 2, 3, 4 times. And the current team is so cynical because they are no longer the original authors of the code base they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
And if the code base is a bit meh and hard to work with, they might be fully disincentivized and uninspired to make any qualitative changes to the code base. Mm-hmm. So they're then perpetually stuck in this, well, we don't have tests, so we want to write tests, but our code base is not testable. But it's really hard to make it testable without having tests because we need to refactor and we're already breaking stuff as is. If we start changing stuff in order to write tests, we're going to break more. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So they hire me to help them during that period where it gets worse.
Got it.
To shorten it. But my success story is most companies that hire me, they go from 0 tests to some tests written in the first week, so that the team writes it themselves, and I just hold their hands as much as possible.
And generally speaking, how big are these teams that you're coaching?
5 to 15 people, like pizza scale. Yeah.
Right. All right. So I love the sort of patience in the sales process that you giving the buyer time to explore options, and I think you said 90% of the time that they go with an agile coach, they're like, yeah, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And okay, so you planted the seed. What happens then when you reach back out? Is it immediately, do you have like a sales interview, or do you have a productized service? Like what's the I don't like using the word pitch, but what's the offer at that point when they're ready to buy?
I'm still trying to figure that out. Generally, there's a combination of me just having a why conversation with them on a call. So I meet with the tech lead generally to figure out what we can do together and whether it's in their budget. Ideally, they would self-validate already with, they see some of their pains being resolved by reading my material on LinkedIn or the booklets, and then they reach out to me and want that specifically. But oftentimes I meet with them on a one-on-one call and then pitch a custom proposal to them, which covers the basis for most of my engagements. But I like to, if I can make it bespoke, I will. Yeah. Now I'm working on a productized service right now, and with help of your current TPS cohort.
Yep.
And what I'm thinking about is just having a tech team audit. That's the best name I have for it right now, which is basically just you're going through some pain. You reach out to me, we go through your main pain points, and I shadow you on some meetings, and I'll tell you things that are obvious to me that are super not obvious to you, that you can easily fix and address. So that's the sort of low-hanging fruit for now.
Cool. All right. Well, it sounds like you're getting the kinds of you're attracting the kinds of leads that would potentially be interested in something like that. So that seems like a pretty good fit.
Yeah, it's not as automated as I would like. So I would like to have a little bit more cadence with my leads.
Hmm.
Right now it's more or less one or two off. So I have a big client, a medium client, and then just as they sort of stream out, a few new ones come in. I have enough, let's say, wiggle room in my execution pipeline to be more intense with those with my time commitment.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to optimize that.
Got it. Right. Okay. Cool. So, so you send a custom proposal, and is it a three option sort of thing, or do
It's a
you?
three option sort of thing. Yeah, it's small, medium, large. Small is one-on-one doing a tech audit, and then meeting with the tech lead one-on-one weekly. It's essentially like a monthly retainer.
Hmm.
The medium option is meeting with the team regularly. So I meet with the team on a strategy meeting weekly, a tactical meeting, and with the tech lead one-on-one. And the big option is I also pair with the team outside of these meetings. So I'm also part of the team, and I communicate to the outside world that I'm part of this team. So I might represent the team with offshore companies, or I might be tactically involved in. I've explained the concept, but it doesn't stick. So rather than telling, I show.
Hmm.
And then I huddle, or I pair or mob program on a huddle with the team to actually get them moving forward,
Okay.
so that they can follow my example. If it takes too long to sort of learn academically or theoretically.
Right. And does that, in a case like that, is your pull request the one that's going in, or is it ultimately their responsibility what code is, so like at this top tier option, if the site goes down on a Saturday, are you getting a phone call or not?
No, I mean, if they choose the large option, the site doesn't go down on Saturday. That's the whole point. And it was my pull request.
I like the
No,
confidence.
but that's my point, right? A lot of teams we had with the company with the company that picked the large option right now.
Mhm.
But we had they did a Friday evening deploy a few weeks ago, and we did a retrospective on it, and it's a typical scenario. It's like, hey, did everybody enjoy that? Was that fun? And everybody's like, no. Then it's one more question like that, and I'm like,
Right.
and then I asked them, hey, did you plan to do Friday evening deploy? And everybody's like, no, of course not. Did you plan not to do it? And everybody's like, one, two, three, bloop, light bulb moment. Because it's really easy to avoid it if you plan not to do it.
Right.
If you say, well, if the question I like to ask them is, well, if today's Tuesday and you know that there's an unexpected, unplanned late Friday deploy coming up this week, what would you do today to plan to not do that? And everybody's like, well, we would split up the work, slice it up a little bit more aggressively, and try to deploy tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great plan. So what are we going to do about it? And then everybody just realigns and reshifts priorities, no questions asked.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's that easy. You just gotta have somebody in there who is not emotionally stressed out and too invested to the project on a tactical level, so they can just strategically ask the stupid questions.
Hmm.
I'm just there shadowing and asking stupid questions.
Nice.
That's my role. And I am, yes, with the large option, I am coding, but I am coding with a lot of assumptions, right? So I bring a lot of my experience in there. Even I have some really wacky testing strategies. If they can't test their critical path, I'll make their critical path testable extremely quickly, whether that's like creating a clone for whatever it is they're integrating with, like just very quickly, or iteratively making their whole, let's say, legacy system encapsulated into some kind of anti-corruption layer, and then I and then I treat it like a black box and teach them how to do testing with CDC or end-to-end tests, or no, I avoid that, but integrate the high-level integration tests where we're testing the behavior of what everybody's doing.
Hmm.
I oftentimes also see them, just shadow them when I see them do a lot of repetitive stuff manually.
Like, what do you mean?
Updating, for example, I might ask them, hey, why can't we deploy this? Well, I haven't tested it yet. Okay, are you going to write a test? And they're like, no. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, test it manually. Okay, on production? It's like, no, locally first. Then I ask them, okay, when you test locally, what's your confidence right now that it works? And they're like, 0. Okay, when you test locally, what's your confidence level that it will work on production? And they're like 20%. Okay, so where does that 80% come from? Well, then I'll deploy the staging and test again. Okay, so once you test on staging, what's your confidence level that it will work in production? 60%. And I'm like, okay, so where does that remaining 40% come from? Well, deploying on production. Well, okay, so today you're testing on local. Then if everything goes well, tomorrow you're testing on staging. And then in 2 days, hopefully, if everything goes well and you pass the code review and nobody else pushed a branch that would not now conflict with yours in the meantime, then maybe we'll deploy in 2 days. They're like, yeah.
And then the customers will test it on production.
Yeah, and then I asked them, can I watch you do that? And then I watch them do it, and then I write down everything they're doing.
Right.
Because if I can write it down, most of the steps that they're doing manually, I can spot a pattern, and I can tell, well, you did this and this and this and this and this. And then you knew exactly what your feature was. You did this, and then you tested whether your feature did what you expected it to do. And whether it broke something that you were working on that can have a regression with what you worked on last week or last month. But that to me, mentally is a test, and it's an acceptance test specifically, and an acceptance integration test. But their code might not be modular enough for them to actually write it into the code base. So I just observe them, and then I write it down on a piece of paper. And when I show it to them, they're like, "Oh, we can write a test for this." And I tell them, "Yeah, we can automate this. Like maybe not running the test, but at least you can create a script that just does what you just did with Postman and calling the endpoints, and then looking at the database and eyeballing stuff in the whatever GUI they're using to look at the database.
Yep.
You can just automate all those queries, all those checks, and we know exactly what you're expecting to see. You can just write that down before you actually go and deploy to production. And that's how it starts. That's how it's like in the really messy code bases, that's how it starts. I observe them, I watch them, I write it down, and then I show them, okay, I watched you do it yesterday manually, and now I wrote a test that mimics you doing that exactly the way you did it, but you did it for 2 hours, and this script now runs it in 40 seconds.
Right.
And then that gets the wheels turning, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, well, I can use that thing that Dennis created, and now I can modify it, and now we can have a whole test suite, and then and now the QA person can join in, and that gets the ball rolling. And usually that's like month 1, month 2.
Mm-hmm.
The first week is just tactical, getting to know the team and writing some easier tests.
Yep.
But then after like 4 to 6 weeks, I get into the really nitty-gritty of, okay, why are deployments slow? Like if I ask the question, why aren't we deploying today? And everybody's like, well, I need to test it on my local machine first. I get into that. I get really annoying and I really persistent on that annoying question of, well, you want to deploy it. I think it's ready, but you won't deploy for another 3 days. What are we going to do about it?
Right. So that's amazing. For just to paint a picture for folks, the story you just told about, talking to the dev about needing to test locally and the percent chance it'll run, and then on staging, and then like, where are you having this conversation? Was this a sort of like ad hoc thing that you just jumped in, or is this like a scheduled meeting? Do you have these meetings with all the individual devs and say, hey, what are you working on? Are you sort of, I'm assuming this is remote and not in person, but I could be wrong. So like, what are the mechanics of how you end up in a conversation like that?
So they introduce me to the team. We connect on Slack. Usually the engagement is scoped to a team.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knows that they're part of, having focus time with Dennis twice a week. And the tech lead know that they're having a one-on-one with me. So on a weekly cadence, I just go through, the main pain points. Are you guys in agreement what the priorities are? Yes. Okay. Can I hear it? Okay. That doesn't sound like agreement. Can we do it again?
Sorry, go ahead.
And then that's like a tactical meeting. A strategic meeting would be me just presenting theory on what domain-driven design is, what clean architecture is, how event storming might help them, what kind of return on investment can they expect in like this week or in this month if they start doing TDD, if they start doing event modeling, if they start doing context mapping or an event storming session with their product person. Because they might not even know. They might not even, or Dennis, why should we invest, 2 hours with a meeting with this and this and that if we already have all of our tickets in Jira? And oftentimes they don't know that, maybe their acceptance criteria for the tickets are lousy. So that's why the tickets aren't going anywhere because nobody has defined what done means. And to me, done is usually valuable to me, my definition of done is valuable to the customer to the degree that we can capture revenue from it. Like that is to me a high level of done.
Yep.
Right. Because if it's valuable to the customer, that in itself is amazing. But if we can then capture revenue from it, that is then amazing plus to the business.
Yeah.
And that is the feedback loop that a lot of engineers are missing. And there's also a lot of misery points that I see that developers are experiencing in FANG companies, where the company is just so large that there is no customer anymore. It's just about the profit margins for the shareholders. So they're completely disconnected from any kind of user feedback. Like you check in code, it passes tests, it passes code review, but then you're just constantly worried about your 360 review, about your pips, about your quarterly review, your performance review, about not getting laid off in the next cycle. And everybody is super stressed out. Like they're one of the highest paid professionals, period, on the planet, making, anywhere from $500,000 to 1.5 million per year. But they're just miserable because they're just too far away from the from any tangible feedback from the customer. Like, yes, you built a feature and somebody actually paid you for it. I can't tell you enough the elation that I felt like selling my first coaching hours with a client, selling my first this service that I'm doing now to my first client, selling my first booklet. That felt amazing because I felt, oh, I did this. I presented it and somebody found it valuable enough to pay me for it.
Right.
To have that gratification loop back to the team, well, to me, the solopreneur, from the customer is extremely valuable. Even when it's not valuable, even when they tell me, no, Dennis, sorry, this sucks. I then bring them on and have a chat with them and try to learn why, where the value was missing, where I missed the mark.
So yeah, it sounds like FANG developers just feel like they're sending their pull request to DevNull, or they might as well be. So okay, so how you mentioned ROI, and how do you measure that? Is there a progress metric for that during the engagement? Is it
yes?
Okay, what do you use to sort of report to your buyer or to indicate to your buyer that it's money well spent?
So there are two things here, right? So first of all, there's the layer of the engagement that paying me is valuable to them, that it's not a cost, that it's actually, it's reducing cost, not creating new cost. That in itself, I'm measuring on a very subjective level. Generally, the feedback I received was, I start moving a few simple things and everybody feels like they have superpowers. Like that to me is a very positive ROI because it's just instant stress relief for the team.
And the team lead or the VPE is aware of that stress relief. In how would they become aware of that stress relief?
The team gets to celebrate more often, which really lifts up team morale, and they can usually have meaningful conversations in smaller cadences. Generally, they would ask the team to do something and it would slog off for like a week, 2, 3, and then maybe they could course correct once a month. Once they start working with me, that can happen like once or twice per week. And then now with this team specifically, several times per day.
Okay, so what does the VPE have their eye on that makes them happy? So is it they're clearing tickets way faster, or in their one-on-ones or their stand-ups or individual meetings with the team members, they're just reporting, 5 out of 5 satisfaction rating?
They're eliminating waste from their process.
But how do they know that?
Well, if they haven't defined any success criteria or let's say sprint goals, if they're following sprints, then I hold them accountable. Well, I helped them hold themselves accountable to writing them. And to give you an example, the most shocking thing we do is cancel a sprint.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, because sometimes they just want to do something, and I just ask them questions about, well, what is important right now, and does the team agree? Like, is the team aligned? Does everybody understand what's important right now? And if the team doesn't understand and everybody's moving in a different direction, we cancel the sprint and we realign. So what happens is that they get feedback much faster. So that they might not get the production release out, instead of 4 months and 3 months, starting off. But at least they get bad news extremely quickly. So they get feedback from the team extremely quickly. That is, I would say, signal number one. And signal number two is the level of confidence and cadence that the frequency at which the team deploys increases drastically.
Okay, that's really concrete. And is the VPE or the buyer typically in the meetings when you're doing these group meetings?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so they're witnessing.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I mean, if at all possible, if I'm not presenting like something theoretical, then I'm usually facilitating conversation between them. Like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I was facilitating a conversation between them, the team I am coaching, and their product owner.
Yep.
So I gave them a list of questions of how to conduct it. I was there facilitating the conversation, and then I just had them go at the product owner and ask a question that they've never asked before in 10 years. And then everybody was like, wow. And I was also record keeping. So I was documenting everything, giving it my own little twist with like a Miro board. So I was really giving it a lot of detail, but what I heard, and I also focus on domain-driven design, like the domain specific language. So I put a lot of emphasis on the words being used and the words being exchanged to denote differences and nuances in meaning that the engineers can then use to name things, because naming things when you're working on some kind of abstract model, factory creator, pattern thing, singleton, factory creator thing, thingamajig, it gets really annoying to then have somebody tell you, well, yeah, but that's doing 7 different things. Can you split it up into 12 different things? And then everything's being called a thingamajig of some kind, a manager, component, class, controller, thing, command. And the business doesn't think about these things in those terms. And a lot of engineering teams that I work with have never experienced extracting vocabulary from the product owner. And that is extremely valuable. So that would be, I think, number 3 on, what signals the product, the VPE gets. The signal is that the team starts using much more product and maybe customer-facing terminology in their tickets, in their daily communication, in their priorities. They might start using nuance and detail the way that a customer does, rather than saying, yeah, that table here where that flag is there. It's like, no, that for the customer, that is a particular kind of alignment with their order, and it's a particular type of exception for their taxation, and then those words seep into the code base slowly.
Yeah. I've been on projects where I maintained a glossary because the communication was so bad that everybody was using. It wasn't just they were using different words for the same things. They were using the same words for different things.
Same words for different things. Yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst. You gotta tell them, hey, your order you're using and your order that you're using, and the owner that the product owner just said that used in 2 different contexts, these are 7 different things. And you don't have words for them.
Right.
And we spend 30 minutes every day just checking, wait, do you mean the thing or the other thing? And because they don't have a domain specific language. And then if I see that this is a problem, I have a strategy meeting with them on Tuesdays usually. It's like, okay, I'm going to present why this would be useful to you right now, so the ROI. And then in 2 days, I have another meeting with them doing it practically. So inviting in a product, inviting in a non-technical co-founder, and just interviewing them, teaching them how to interview them to extract this. And we have the same order of business for whether it's DDD or test-driven development or event modeling, event storming, even things like continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, increasing their quality and testing. I cover a lot of it. I wear many hats. The main reason I meet with the tech lead is that I figure out what their priorities are. If they don't know, then I help them figure it out week one, and then I adapt what I am doing to what their priorities are.
Yep.
So maybe they are when I start working with them, they're in some kind of planning phase. Okay, so I adapt everything to planning. So it's a little bit more event storming, a little bit more DDD, a little bit more experimentation. They might not be expecting to deploy. We're planning right now, Dennis. And I'm like, well, shouldn't we deploy something this week to figure out all those unknowns that we are leaving off for the end?
Yeah.
Like what? And then I sprinkle some ideas and like, well, we have never done it that way before. I'm like, yeah, but shouldn't we try? And then it gets the wheels turning. This is what just-in-time training is. Like they don't know what they'll get, but then we have a commitment that it will improve code health. So you asked me the ROI. I also strictly ask for 3 KPIs of the tech lead at the beginning of the engagement for us, which is 1 KPI measuring the tactical level. So not per se code coverage, but the amount of useful tests on the critical path. And then we define what the critical path is. It's usually payment related or something that the customers really value. Number 2 is deployment cadence and overall code health with a tool like Code Scene or SonarCube. And number 3 is a very much team morale metric, which is how stressed out is the team, how often did reprioritization happen, was there a deployment on Friday afternoon, was deployment difficult, was there a mess up, midway through the sprint, was there no deployments being done and promised, was there something done on Monday and then not released, just regular sort of blocker management essentially, and how that affects the morale and sort of the cynicism level or the optimism level of the team. But what we're measuring with that last subjective metric is essentially if the team did well this sprint, did they celebrate? Because one of the pain points I'm helping them address is also sometimes the team is just pushed too hard. So they know they can do X, but their sprint is being planned for 2X. So even if they deliver X, they can't celebrate because they always feel behind. They always feel like there's something that they didn't deliver.
This is going to sound like a stupid question, but what do you mean specifically by the team celebrated?
I'm checking with their well-being at the end of the week or at the end of the cycle.
As a group or individually?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay. And so, and then you're the one that basically measures their subjective experience of the last.
No, I'm asking them to measure it. I'm just checking whether they've done so and what the general temperature in the room is. Because if everybody is cynical about just coming to work, quality will degrade over time.
Right.
It takes a well-nurtured, benevolent, enlightened team to really, really get into the continuous improvement track as a company, as a culture, as typical digital transformation might lead you to believe.
Cool. So yeah, let's pivot a little bit into the pricing. So you did say that you give them sort of small, medium, and large, good, better, best proposal. They pick something, and let's say it's the top one. So that's the most intense one. Is it those 3 different things, are they all ongoing monthly things, or is it time boxed? Are they all time boxed, or is it some kind of a mixture?
Right now, it's a monthly thing. So regardless of how many hours I work, I usually under promise and over deliver. So regardless of how many hours I work, I price them fixed every month. I charge them fixed every month. I price them based on just the level of engagement that they want and the value that it can provide, which usually for them specifically is some combination of, well, if this is going to improve the productivity of the team drastically, I'm pricing it essentially on the current cost of the team, which means that whatever geographical region they might be in will impact price to some degree, which sucks a little bit for me. But for them, it's amazing because they essentially get free cost pricing parity, right? So right now I'm working with a Romanian company. So for them, it's a good deal because they essentially get somebody who's worked in US and European companies. Like I worked in US and European companies I almost have 20 years of experience, and they get that for the price of what they would locally pay for a developer. But I don't promise full-time in intensity.
Right.
I'm just there shadowing, coaching, mentoring, and with the big intensity engagement, I hold them accountable to knowing what the priorities are, to hold themselves accountable to knowing what the priorities are. And then when we agreed what the priorities are, I help with the most important thing. I see a pain point, I help them address it. And then that really gets the really painful, repetitive, routine pain away. It's like telling somebody who's never brushed their teeth before, just brush your teeth every morning and every evening, and it'll be fine. It'll suck for a while, but it'll be fine. And then when I see some mishap happening on a large scale, I jump in immediately without them having to sort of manage me. So I'm basically a VPE/tech lead/senior engineer that is fully autonomous, following their priorities without requiring a huge amount of management.
Cool. And so, how long do thanks? Yeah, that's a perfect description. And now, how long do these engagements typically go? Do they have, do you say like, it'll probably take 6 months in your situation, but it could be longer, it could be less. You just go until they say, okay, we're all set. Mm-hmm. Or is there or when you start, do you say, okay, we'll check in we're going to do this for 6 months. It's going to be this much per month, every month for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, we'll reconvene and see if you want to go for another 6 months. Or is it more like you just sort of, you're feeling over time like you're delivering less and less value because the team is really growing with your assistance, and you're kind of like, I don't think these people need me anymore. And then you volunteer that to the buyer and say, look, I think we're probably done here. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have that. So I'm not confident. My positioning is not nailed down enough yet that I could say, okay, we're going to start off with 3 months or 6 months or 12 months and then go from there. So what I am doing right now is I'm usually meeting them for an audit. Generally, they need somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks at first to really get a feel for it. And that's my recommendation. I gave them a recommendation of maybe 1 or 2 months, priced that first with them. And then whether we're going to continue with an ongoing monthly retainer or I encourage them I give them a little bit of a discount if they pay in advance for 3 months. Because it makes my life a little bit easier regarding my own time management.
Sure.
So that's there right now. I don't have my positioning nailed down enough yet for me to be pricing anything a bit more long term. But generally, the moment the team plateaus, I'm out.
What does that look like when the team plateaus?
The team gets to a point where the continuous drive for growth is no longer organic, it's being forced. So they're like, okay, we learned a lot, but now I just want to apply this for a year or 6 months. Like, I don't want to learn anymore.
And things are demonstrably better at that point. It's just a question of how much better do we want them?
So it's like somebody who's, going to the gym to work out, and they're in a bad shape, and then they improve their shape. So they go on a really intense program for 6 months, and then they taper off. And then like, okay, now I'm going to do it, 3 times a week, not 6.
Maintenance. Yeah,
exactly. So I offer them then a maintenance call with me, essentially, to go back down in intensity to that, to that small option where I'm meeting with a tech lead to check in whether the metrics are still in place so that they don't regress while I'm gone. Which is my main value proposition to them. Like, I want them to do this, not me to be forcing it, right? So it has to work even when I'm not in the room. So I'm very conscious of not being a enabler and then the disabler when I leave the room. So I'm just there to facilitate them learning it and doing it themselves, which is why it's important that they learn how it applies to them, not how Denis wants to do it.
Yeah, and get hooked on it. Like, they're like, oh, exactly. This is way better. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's where that getting hooked, that is a staple of my success stories so far. Like, I get a lot of feedback where, Denis, we tried it. Like, yes. Oh, so this is how serious mature companies do this. And then they get this feeling of, oh, we're professionals now, like developers. It's like, hell yeah. Because it's really the simple things of maybe optimizing a little bit more requests out of one server, or optimizing, or maybe they just have a really rigid system where, even we haven't gotten to canceling sprints yet, but maybe they have a really rigid deployment cycle. And I ask them, you deployed something that doesn't affect the client, but it works. Like you have 100% confidence it works in production. They're like, yes. Why are you waiting for QA? Why are you waiting for code review? You pair programmed with this other person. Why are you waiting for the branch to be merged? Why are you waiting for somebody else to tell you it's okay? Just freaking deploy it now. You're 100% confident. Like, don't follow the process if the process is following you down. Change the process. Question the process. Question everything. Like, adapt the process to serve you, and then execute on the process. Change the process every week for every sprint, so that you know what amount of process you need to execute well just for this.
Mm.
Right,
Yeah. So let's go into the cancel sprint thing, because we talked about that after the last call.
And that's one of the most shocking things that.
So let's talk about that. So I know there's a lot of software developers listening. Probably everybody else has tuned out by now. So I think it's okay if you get pretty geeky about this. So you said something to me previously about canceling sprint, and I was like, sort of baffled by like, but what do you can't, sprint starts on Monday. Let's say you cancel it on Thursday. Like, what does the team do for the rest of the sprint? Or do you change, like, how do the mechanics of that work? So could you just describe why you would cancel a sprint, and then when you cancel a sprint, what that even means?
So the first thing is, I usually like to share a James Copland video that I really like, to the tech lead at the beginning of the week, about, just what a sprint is, what a sprint is for. A sprint is for delivering on a sprint goal. Like, just to be clear, I never say you need sprints. As far as I'm concerned, we're just working every day and deploying stuff every day. I don't need sprints to do that.
Right.
Like, to me, the mechanics of a sprint hold no value. Mm-hmm. But, if the team is using sprints, then I would like to see a sprint goal in each sprint. A lot of teams just name their sprints, and they have pretty goofy names, and then there's like tickets and everything like colorful and epics, and everything's assigned. but if I can't see the sprint, there's an optional text field in Jira under the title of the sprint which says sprint goal, and it should really describe to the team in no uncertain terms, using client-facing terminology, what the heck the client's going to get this week, or at the end of the sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not there, I show essentially the tech lead the ROI of having that there. And then if they adopt it and they have it there, I encourage them to cancel the sprint once the team is no longer following that goal.
What does that mean? So, like, it would seem to me that if the goal was there, then the tickets that were pulled in for that sprint would be aligned with that goal, no?
No, it's usually, guys, can you hurry up with X? We need to urgently start on Y. And I'm like, okay, you guys are working on X. Product wants to work on Y. Okay, guys, is X done today? No. Okay, cancel X. Start working on Y.
Mm-hmm.
Like, product is telling you, hey guys, hurry up with that thing we planned, but then determined wasn't important. We want you to start working on the important thing as fast as possible, because the starting deadline is approaching, right? So the deadline of when we need to start in order to hit the roadmap is approaching, and you guys need to start now. Or maybe the starting deadline is already passed, and they are now thinking about maybe canceling parts of the roadmap.
So basically someone in product changed their priorities.
Yeah, like there's that little bit of pressure coming in, and you plan the sprint. It's like, yeah, we will plan it because it looks like a low-hanging fruit. Like, we will put it in the sprint if it's one day. Turns out to be 3, and then this pressure comes in. Right. I'm sure every developer knows this pressure. It's like, like, it was nice that we started doing that, but now it's taking a little bit too long. Can you wrap up? And usually I see developers say, yeah, I'm gonna wrap up and then have it finished by tomorrow. I jump in, I say, hell no! Like, this should have been wrapped up 2 days ago. It's not wrapped today. Now you're promising in 2 days. Hell no.
Yeah, if you told me up front, if you told us up front it's going to take 5 days, we would have said, don't do it.
Exactly. And then I asked the product, hey, if you knew that this is going to take 5 days, would you even do it? And usually they tell the development team, in no uncertain terms, hell no, we thought it was really quick. We really need to start on this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when we cancel the sprint. If the sprint goal was following the thing that the team is wasting time with.
Right. Okay, it makes total sense. And yes, I've been there 100 times.
Yeah. But what I do encourage them is to underplan the sprint and finish it early. Like generally every time we cancel a sprint, the next sprint we finish early. And it always surprises them. And I always promise them, once you get serious about your priorities, you will start never mind hitting deadlines. You will you will hit them early. Your team will be watching the ceiling, asking for, well, we finished early. We didn't expect that. What should we do next? But I tell them, don't start a sprint when you finish early. Now you have time for support tickets. It's just don't start one. And you asked me this question last time, if it's sprint starts on Monday and it's 2 weeks and you cancel it on Wednesday, what do you do on the remaining day? My advice is, well, if we cancel the sprint, we replan the sprint on Wednesday and we have another sprint Wednesday to Wednesday.
Right.
We just shift the calendar. Yeah, we just shift the calendar. We don't just magically twiddle our thumbs and wait for the next allowed, agreed upon sprint cycle to emerge from the mystical Monday. No, we actually just, we already have everything prioritized. They're just out of order. We just dump everything out of Jira and we just put it back in the right order and we continue work.
Yeah. Yeah. But if they finish, so then they do have a clear objective for the sprint that, it's supposed to be a 2-week sprint. They finish it in a week. And now it's
if it's planned for 10 days, they usually finish it in 8.
Mm-hmm. And then, so you got 2 days to just kind of keep yourself busy, work on other stuff.
Yeah, if usually they have support tickets mixed in or somebody working on support, or maybe there's some kind of deal with some other team and who's doing support and who's doing triage, or bug fixing. But generally, I tell them, you can start another sprint, or you can just, have most of the team work on support, wrap up things that are really now, the things that you canceled, maybe you can address them now, and then just continue your normal cycle. Once you finished, once the customer has been given value, you get a lot of flexibility. But if you're constantly catching up and you're constantly behind, that you need to be on a rigid system because you're sort of punishing yourself for not taking prioritization seriously.
And who's involved in a sprint planning meeting? What people are there? Is product there?
I'm not involved in their sprint planning meeting. I'm specifically not. So I don't want to have influence in how they plan. I don't like sprints, so I don't want to be there being the asshole saying, "Hey, why are we having sprints?" No, they have their own meetings. I'm not involved in their road mappings. I'm not involved with sprint plannings.
Okay.
But the tech lead will have questions about, Dennis, I'm going to plan the sprint with the team on Monday. What should we focus on? And then I give them general advice on, what they can do differently. What they can do differently on their dailies, what they can do differently on their sprint plannings, and then just go do them. And sometimes, maybe once or twice I'll shadow them to really, if there's something really goofy going on, I might shadow them. If a company has an 8-hour sprint meeting, I want to see that. I like that. I'm getting popcorn and I want to see that because there's probably somebody just binge arguing and reprioritizing. And
arguing.
And I'm going to document that and write them down and then give them actionable feedback.
Yeah. So the reason that's good to know that that's not part of your time under normal circumstances. I'm wondering about if there's any friction when sprint planning meetings are. It sounds like they're jumping all over the place. They were Monday for a while, but now they're Wednesdays, and then now they're on Tuesdays. Now they're on Fridays. Does anybody care?
No, but that's the point. Sprints are by themselves meaningless, so nobody should care.
Right.
But because nobody should care, we should be able to carelessly cancel them and move them around. If you get sick, you can move meetings around willy-nilly on your calendar. No problem.
Yeah.
We get, for God's sake, with daylight saving, we're moving the time around. And then you're telling me you can't cancel a sprint or finish it early? Hell no.
Yeah.
We're canceling the sprint if it's necessary. But but I always say it's about bringing valuable features to the client that you can capture as revenue. That is the main cycle. If the team does that once, twice, 3 times every week, then that is our main cadence of progress. And if that's not there, then we're addressing it. Like we're not waiting till the end of the sprint to have a retrospective. God no, because then you've already wasted your entire sprint. And then you're going to talk about how you wasted the entire sprint. No, like if I'm seeing it's going to happen, I'm going to pull the brakes and have a chat. And then if I see the team is not aligned, I will realign them before they invest 2 weeks of their time.
How do you see the first thing you said that they're not delivering, or like do they each developer individually estimate how long they think a thing is going to take, and then you can just look in Jira and say like, oh, this person's taking already twice as long as they thought they would?
No, Jonathan, we don't even estimate. Like if they estimate, I get them even off of that cocaine bill. Like it's because it's not.
How do you know if it's getting off track?
Well, because I can just see their delivery cadence. Like, generally, if they use pizzas or story points or hours or whatever they're using, if their stories are small enough, if the stories are sliced, and I use usually a combination of event modeling, TDD, and just pure agile story slicing methodology to do this. If their stories are small enough, then the team will either deliver a story each day per person or a story each week per person. Like we have a tendency to do that. We have a tendency to optimize that particular cadence. Mm-hmm. So if you tell me that you're on the weekly track, then a team of 5 people will deliver 5 stories. And then if I see that you only delivered 4 and you want to deliver 5, that to me is measure enough. Like it doesn't matter how much they were estimated to, because the team will generally create tickets of equal sizes. And if I can see that a ticket is not moving forward, then that one's too large and I call them out on it.
Mm.
So, right, so it's
what dashboard are you looking at? So you're just looking in Jira?
Whatever they're using. Mm-hmm. Jira, Trello, Basecamp, Kanban boards.
And so like every day you take 15 minutes or something and you go check that out?
No, I check it out once or twice per week. That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I meet with the team 2 times per week and then with the tech lead on a different day, once a week. Mm-hmm. So I'm in contact with the team at least 3 times per week. And if they're on the big intensity option, then I meet with them essentially every day.
Yep.
So the only thing I'm scanning for is whether they are aligned on what's important. If they are aligned on what's important and they agree on what's important, if everybody in the team can describe to each other what they think is important, and if I do that in a black box and everybody gives me the same answer, then I'm like, you guys don't need me.
Yep. Makes sense.
But if everybody gives a slightly different nuanced answer, if everybody gives a slightly different change in priorities, then that will create friction, that will slow the team down, and that will create some unwanted or accidental dependencies between deployments. And that will then be unexpected, either sluggish behavior on, it was done on Wednesday, but then we didn't deploy it. So what I'm looking for is, if somebody tells me, this is easy, it's going to be done tomorrow, I ask them, okay, can you put the deployment of it on the calendar? Because I'll meet with you and I'll watch you deploy. And they're like, oh no, well, I'm not sure. And I'm like, okay, well, when are you sure? Well, maybe on Thursday. I was like, okay, let's put it on the calendar for Thursday. And then if it's done on Thursday and they find a problem and then it's not deployed on Thursday, if it's deployed on Monday, then next week, okay, the root cause was we were super confident that something was easy. When is something easy? And they're like, if something is easy when I can deploy the same week. I'm like, well, then how can you tell me that it's done now and you're going to deploy today? Shouldn't we do something about that? Like, shouldn't we have terminology to say it's easy on a weekly cadence or easy on a daily cadence?
Right.
And then usually that gets the wheels turning and we start talking. Once I get them to use terminology of, like in the morning we meet, Dennis, can you meet me in 3 hours? I'm going to deploy something. I haven't started yet. I'm like, yeah, sure. You need help?
That's an estimate of sorts.
It is an estimate, but the point is they are not using Jira to estimate something to get permission to start working on it. They are using Jira asynchronously after the fact to document what they are doing. They're not, like most engineers use Jira to figure out what they should be doing and when they should have been done, and when, they're using it like a recipe, not as a documentation tool.
Got it. Yeah, I never had the pleasure of using Jira, so I'm not really familiar with it.
I mean, you're not missing out on anything. It's like any tool is just a tool.
Right.
But really, it has to capture. I mean, you've probably done this before. You probably have a calendar. Like Jira is just a glorified calendar. If you have a calendar and you put to-dos on your calendar, and you have 5 to-dos for today, and you only do one, and then you move 4 of them tomorrow, hell no, you're not doing 4 of them tomorrow. Right? Like it's that kind of thing. When I get you to the cadence of you don't put it on the calendar anymore, so you get motivated to do it, but you do it after the fact, after you've done it, I'm happy.
That is really important distinction, right? You're using it to document historical, like the truth. This is what happened.
The facts, yes.
Right.
So the team agreed this was a priority. We did this. Everything that was done instantly. Yeah, we just created a tracking ticket that we have done this so that the release could be tagged. And then everything that takes more than one day or a few hours, then we created a ticket just to track it. After the team was already agreed and are actively working on it. And then the developers create their own tickets. They assign it to themselves. There isn't that sort of top level micromanagement needed anymore. And then they sort of start being autonomous because everybody agrees what's important.
Right. Yeah, they all know what the objective is.
They all know what the objective is. They all know what the sprint goal is. And everybody's like, okay, we can't all do it at the same time. Okay, so you're going to do that. Okay, so you need, who's owning this? Okay, I'm owning it. Oh, that person's sick. Well, okay, I'm going to take over because I was working on something less important than they were. And if they agree on what the priority dependencies between each other, between them is, it's like if Bob is working on something high priority and Bob cannot share that work, then Steve will work on number 2. But when Bob gets sick, then Steve is like, oh, I'm going to cancel what I was working on, regardless of how far along I was, and take over what Bob was working on because he's sick and his thing was number 1. Once the team starts doing that, you just at the end of the day or during the day, just document in Jira. Like, it's like, oh, hey, we moved this thing. We under prioritized this. This is now on hold. That's a priority. This became a blocker because Bob is sick and nobody's available or nobody understands to take over. So we don't want to mess with it until we get like a green light from management, things like that. And then you document that. And then the next morning, it's all resolved.
Right.
But the teams that I work with, they never had the fortune of just working on a functional, great performing team like that. So they have no experience with this. They are using Jira as a projection of the past, of what somebody in the past thought the future should look like. And they're really, really investing a lot of money to make that, to synchronize that picture as time goes on.
Right.
And the further away you are from the planning point, the more unrealistic, the more detached from reality it becomes. So I'm just teaching the team how to plan their day, just meet in the morning. It's like, hey, not huddling over what did we do yesterday? Am I blocked? What am I gonna do today? It's like, hey guys, do we agree on what the priorities are? Okay, what are the priorities? I want to hear everybody. You think that's the team's priority? You think that's the team? Okay. Well, this person, you said something else than yesterday. Did the priorities change? And then they will say, yes, like I learned this and this and this and this. And then everybody's on the team's like, oh, holy cow, I think I should help you because we didn't know that yesterday. It's like, yeah, you probably should. Okay, so we should probably replan the day. Should we cancel the sprint? No. We're still following the same goal. We just found an obstacle that everybody has to sort of tackle now today. And then you do that. And then that's the minimal ritual needed. It's like a small 15, 20-minute meeting, which they can learn how to do themselves. Right. And then after the fact, when they've done half of it, at the end of the day, they just document it.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot of novelty in there. Some I think you described it as wacky earlier.
And canceling a sprint usually shocks them. It's like, Dennis, I canceled the sprint. It's usually the phone call I get.
The shameful admission.
No, it's just stressful because then after like the next day, they realize that nobody cares. They just never done it before. The product doesn't care about sprints. Like the business doesn't care about sprints. Scrum was. a tool created by engineers for engineers. Like the customer doesn't care what you're like how what's a huddle like can you guys huddle a little bit so you get that feature working so I can see my account balance like
Right.
nobody talks like that.
Right. Man, this has like been a tour de force. I think people are going to get a ton of value out of this. But I'm looking at the clock and we need to wrap up. So where can people go to find out more about what you're doing? Maybe ask you follow-up questions, connect with you on LinkedIn, maybe find some of these booklets, share them with people who need them, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm setting up a newsletter next week. And my hub right now is my LinkedIn page. So Denis Čahuk on LinkedIn. If you Google for Coach Dennis or the Technologist podcast, it all leads back to my hub on LinkedIn. There you can find my booklets, my podcast, and my daily posts if you follow me. There's also a link there to doing a tech team audit, and scheduling a call with me, or just message me one-on-one and we can talk. That's the best place to find me.
Perfect. Yeah, Dennis with one N. So yes. I will put all of that in the show notes. But Dennis, thanks again. That's been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonathan. I'm really glad that we got to repeat this. You asked great questions. You're a great host.
Oh, thank you.
You're a great host.
It's too bad we could have recorded it the first time if I had realized how much.
Like we didn't know where it was headed.
Right. Well, all right, folks. That's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.